Hello, everybody. This is Empowering Democracy. I'm your host, Joe Firestone. And this is yet another Dump the Corruption show. Seems like I do a lot of those these days. This one is going to focus on a piece by Thom Hartmann on MAGA plans for election 2024. And I think those plans are very interesting. Every once in a while he talks about them, and every once in a while I talk about what he has to say about them. Uh, this is going to be a little different, though, tonight, because I'm not sure he's on the money here. But let's go. Maybe I'll back up a little on the visual. This is from Common Dreams. Here's a picture of Mike Johnson with a beatific smile on his face. He was applauded after being nominated for Speaker of the House of Representatives on October 24th of 2023. He's already had his troubles, of course. The very right-wing people, even more right-wing than he is, have been giving him loads of trouble lately with respect to the new money bill that has now passed the House and the Senate and is being signed by Joe Biden. It's more a stopgap bill to keep the government open, because since this is an election year, the Republicans don't want to shut down the government. Certainly Mike Johnson doesn't want to, because that could be bad news for them in the election, so they don't want to do it. MAGA's plan to, quote, legally, unquote, steal the 2024 election. Trump Republicans are committed to abandoning America's historic embrace of democracy. Well, I don't know about how committed that embrace has been of late, but anyway, this is by Thom Hartmann, February 27, 2024. It originally appeared at thomhartmann.com, his own website. Back on March 13th, 2020, almost exactly 4 years ago, I wrote an article that was published at alternet.org, laying out how Republicans were then, 10 months before January 6th, planning to partially repeat the debacle of the election of 1876, having then Vice President Mike Pence refuse to certify swing state votes and thus throw the election to the House to keep then President Donald Trump in office, no matter how the election went. When I published the article 10 months before January 6th, I received concerned and even alarmed communications from several Democratic strategists and a few elected officials who basically said they didn't think there was any way Trump would try such an audacious move, and if he did, he wouldn't get away with it. But I was right, and that was exactly what Trump had up his sleeve. We saw it play out on January 6th. The only thing that stopped him was Pence's unwillingness to go along with stealing an election. It was amazing that that Pence did not go along with it, I thought. But he definitely showed some backbone. Not that he's been rewarded for showing that backbone, but I think the rest of us are grateful to him. Now, I'm hearing a new story from those same GOP insiders, as well as other commentators, about Trump's schemes for 2024. Here's what I'm hearing. Republicans are planning, in the event Joe Biden wins re-election and Democrats hold the Senate and take the House, this November. So here's where I say, I don't want Donald Trump winning. I don't want Joe Biden winning. And still, we all got to do the best we can to see they are not the choice in the fall. I know I keep saying that. I'm going to keep saying that. I'm going to keep saying that. Okay. I think already we have a situation where there may be not necessarily the choice in the fall because Bobby Kennedy is making some gains. I don't like Bobby Kennedy for reasons I've indicated in many other streams, but I certainly don't want either Joe Biden or Donald Trump, okay, to win re-election. No, I think the way Bobby Kennedy's thinking, he may also do a lot of damage if he wins. Of course, okay, for myself, I'm beginning to zero in uh, on Jill Stein. I just, uh, you know how I feel about the choice between Trump and Biden. First, Republicans need to make sure they're in control of the House of Representatives on January 6, 2025, when the new president will be certified. To do that, even though Democrats might have won enough seats to take back the House in the 2024 election, Speaker Mike Johnson will refuse to swear into Congress on January 3rd. A handful of those Democrats claiming there are, quote, irregularities, unquote, in their elections that must be first, okay, investigated. Now, this is the part of this article that really puzzled me, okay. The reason why it puzzled me is because if the Democrats have won enough seats to take back the House in the 2024 election, then on January 3rd, Mike Johnson isn't going to be the Speaker of the House. There isn't going to be any Speaker of the House. I'm of the opinion that what happens on January 3rd is that the representative elects as specified, as specified by the states. In other words, those who win the congressional elections are declared the winners by the states. They are the representative elects. Secretaries of state actually do that. Okay, so they declare who won, okay, the elections. And in many cases, it's pretty pro forma. And then they communicate who the representative elects are to the House clerk. And she puts the names of the representatives on the big board. And when they convene on January 3rd, they have to say that they are present, okay, by name. And then the first thing they do on January 3rd is to hold a vote for the Speaker. I don't see how Mike Johnson gets into the process. He doesn't get into the process where he can refuse to swear them in if he's not Speaker, and it's the Speaker who swears in the representative elects and gets them to be representatives. That's like the first official act of the Speaker. The Speaker calls the House to order and then swears in everybody. But the election of the Speaker by the representative elects is prior to the Speaker taking the gavel and swearing in the representative elects. So, if there are a majority of representative elects as determined by the elections in the states, and the Democrats have taken back the House, then there's no Speaker Mike Johnson. If the Democrats have taken back the House The Speaker will be Hakeem Jeffries. And Hakeem Jeffries is not going to refuse to swear into Congress on January 3rd a handful of those Democrats. Going on with the article, consider that Johnson is still refusing to swear in Representative Tom Suozzi, a Democrat of New York, who recently won George Santos' old seat, something Johnson apparently did to maintain enough Republican majority votes to impeach Secretary of Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas. Johnson says they'll swear him in this coming Thursday, but nobody's holding their breath. Of course, that's a different situation because Johnson has been the Speaker and was the Speaker at the time of the election of Santos, and he's playing around with the swearing in, and he can do so because he's the Speaker. But he won't be the Speaker. He won't be the Speaker on January 3rd when he's standing for re-election as Speaker. He will not be the Speaker then. And again, the representative-elects will not become the representatives until he becomes the Speaker and swears them in. And if Democrats have a majority, again, he will not become the Speaker. But going on with this article, like Senator Mitch McConnell withholding Merrick Garland's nomination to the Supreme Court for over a year, withholding certification of a handful of Democrats would be easy, legal, and completely immoral. There's nothing Democrats can legally do to stop Speaker Johnson from pulling this off. He can postpone swearing a member in for as long as he wants. He can, but if he's not the Speaker, he can't. That keeps Speaker, quote, MAGA Moscow Mike, unquote, Johnson in charge of the House, so they can also refuse to accept the Electoral College certificates of election from a handful of states where they claim there are, quote, problems, unquote. Keep in mind, Johnson was the guy who organized the wave of 138 House members who voted not to certify Joe Biden's election in January of 2020. That's why Trump wanted him as Speaker. So here we have to say, even though I don't recognize the scenario that Thom has put in here, it's certainly the case that if the Republicans retain control of the House, then Johnson would be in a position to refuse to certify the election in certain swing states where things are close in order to prevent either Joe Biden or Bobby Kennedy or hopefully Joe Stein from becoming the president of the United States. So this could happen if the Republicans have the speakership. But of course, they won't have the speakership if a majority of Democrats become the representatives elect. Representative Elise Stefanik, a Republican of New York, going on with this, the number 3 person in House Republican leadership, has already refused to say whether she'd vote to certify the presidential election results this November. Others, like Kentucky Republican Congressman Thomas Massie, are repeatedly mentioning their belief that the House gets to decide who's president, not the people or even the Electoral College. As Massie posted on X, Maine, Colorado, and other states that might try to bureaucratically deny ballot access. What do you mean bureaucratically? It's the secretaries of state or the attorney generals in these states that are beginning to do that now. By the way, it's no longer Maine, Colorado, it's Illinois now also. Okay, they're not trying to bureaucratically deny anything. There's no bureaucracy involved. There's one elected official. To deny ballot access to any Republican nominee should remember the House of Representatives is the ultimate arbiter of whether to certify electors from those states. God. In response, Elon Musk posted a one-word comment. Interesting. Well, by the way, here we have to mention that in terms of certifying the results from the states, that certification process does involve the Vice President of the United States, who on January 6th is going to be Kamala Harris. So she's going to take a position that's going to be similar, okay, to the one taken by Mike Pence. And if the elections go to the Democrats and they have the Electoral College vote, I'm not sure Congress is going to get a chance to object. I see Thomas Massey thinks that he can get a chance to object, but I don't think they get a chance to object. Okay, of course, if the House goes for the Democrats, they certainly won't get a chance to object. Then, regardless of how many votes Biden won by, electoral or popular, the House simply refuses to certify the Electoral College votes of enough states that the minimum of 270 isn't reached. Under the 12th Amendment, like with the election of 1876, that throws the election to the House where each state has one vote. Of course, it may be that also it's a possibility the Republicans won't have a majority of the governorships come the first day of 2025. Okay, right now, 26 state delegations, okay, are GOP controlled. But whether they will be after the election of 2024, I don't know. But maybe Tom knows, and he may be right about that. I don't know. While a majority of states live in a state run by Democrats, a majority of the states themselves are run by Republicans. Each state gets one vote for president in the House. And right now, 26 state delegations are GOP controlled, meaning that a majority of the House would simply vote to put Trump back into the White House, 26 to 23. The Pennsylvania's delegation is 50-50. This is all totally legal. Okay, I don't know whether Pennsylvania's delegation will be split 50-50. Again, it depends what happens to the elections for the House. Okay. Oh, I implied here the governors are relevant. It's not true the governors are relevant. I made a mistake about that. When he says 26 state delegations are GOP controlled, he means the House members in those states have a majority of the Congress people. But if there's a sweep for the Democrats this coming year in Congress, then we might not have 26 to 23 or 26 to 24 in favor of the Republicans. It could be entirely different. So a lot hangs on the elections for the House this year as to whether shenanigans can come to the fore in the election for the president. The Putin/Trump caucus in the House, led by Speaker Johnson, I think that's a little unfair of Tom, has largely given up on democracy where elections don't give them power. I think that's correct. As outrageous as this scenario sounds, they justify it to themselves as being essential to, quote, save America, unquote, from, quote, woke, quote, Democrats. Johnson has repeatedly said he thinks God himself put Johnson into the speakership, to fulfill some great destiny, comparing himself with Moses. He doesn't have the beard for that. Stealing a presidential race, quote, for the greater good, unquote, almost certainly qualifies, okay, as that. And although Congress in 2022 raised the number of congressional objectors necessary to stop the certification of a presidential vote, Johnson himself was able to round up more than that number in 2020. This is eminently doable. Finally, the Supreme Court long ago ruled that they and the entire U.S. court system have no jurisdiction over political issues that the Constitution says must be resolved by Congress. This issue of Congress certification of electoral college votes certainly qualifies. So no matter what the courts might want to say or do, there's probably no legal tool they can use to block a second Trump presidency under these circumstances. Right-wing billionaires and neo-fascists within the GOP are salivating at this prospect. Steve Bannon and Stephen Miller might be giddy. In one fell swoop, they'll take back the government, putting an end to the pesky problem of democracy and voters wanting nice things. President Trump issues a new Schedule F executive order. Suddenly, 20,000 or so of the top management of every federal agency find themselves out of a job, being replaced by conservative ideologues who are being vetted by Heritage and other conservative think tanks as you're reading these words. Once they have control of both the political and the deep state or administrative government, these conservatives intend to set about making changes they've been pushing for years. End gay marriage and criminalize being trans. Outlaw abortion and most forms of birth control. End the teaching of Black history. Outlaw DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and affirmative action of any sort. Shut down most functions of the Environmental Protection Agency so the fossil fuel and chemical industries can do whatever they want to our air and water. End enforcement of our anti-monopoly laws. Fire thousands of Internal Revenue Service investigators to make America safe for morbidly rich tax cheats. Shut down all of the green initiatives and instead, quote, drill baby drill. Sell off public lands and parks to the highest bidders. Privatize Social Security and end traditional Medicare. End federal funding for public schools and colleges. Outlaw unions. It's truly breathtaking. They're committed to abandoning America's historic embrace of democracy, the, quote, radical new form of government, unquote, that our nation's founders brought back into the world after it had vanished for almost 3,000 years. Well, it's debatable whether they really brought that back into the world in 1789, Tom. There are many who would argue that we didn't have a democracy at first and that we maybe have never had a real democracy, though we might have come closer in the 1960s and 1970s to having that. But as Americans have figured out the GOP's priorities and are disgusted by their obeisance to great wealth and Vladimir Putin, Republicans have decided that winning free and fair elections is for suckers. Stealing them is so much easier. I don't see any legal way such a strategy can be stopped because it's all based on, quote, legal, unquote, technicalities. Like the legal technicality of the former President George W. Bush and Trump both lost the national popular vote but became president anyway without significant protests from the American people. When I wrote that article laying out Trump's plan to have phony electors at all back in 2020, people were upset. I was, quote, giving him ideas, unquote. Some may similar say about this article, quote, don't tell them how to do it, unquote. But this has already been written about extensively by Newsweek's editor-at-large, Tom Rogers, by Mark Medish, and Joel McCleary for the Washington Spectator. Covered last Friday night in an opening monologue by Joy Reid. It's public knowledge, although the media seems unwilling to discuss it. But of course, some of them already discussed it, right? So, so I don't know about that. I do want to review some part of this article uh, once again, I might not have properly understood it. Uh, so even though the vice president certified the 2020 election, Congress did have a say, and Johnson organized the wave of 138 House members who voted not to certify Biden's election in January of 2020. So evidently, the same thing can happen, uh, 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 but with a majority of Republican votes, okay, in the House. Okay, even though that did not happen in January 6th, because the Republicans were probably ashamed to do it. I think Thom is assuming here they would not be ashamed to do that uh, if Biden won again or somebody else other than Trump were to win uh, and not have taken office yet in the early part, okay, of January. So let me continue and complete this then. The best way to prevent this from happening is to widely publicize their scheme, so public opinion will become so intense that they fear the consequences. It's a thin thread holding our republic together, says Thom, but at least it's something. Pass it along, he says. And that is the end, okay, of this article. Let me take a brief look at your comments, and then I have to get over to Dee's. Dee was here and she shared this, but by now I'm sure she's over at her show starting that. I don't have very many comments here. Okay, nobody really had any comments. Okay, I think this is obviously very dangerous. Yeah, I mean, it's really a serious matter when people don't have the sense of honor to uphold, okay, an election that is obviously legal. It was a serious matter in the early part of 2021. It might be even more serious this time because Trump could be even more decisively beaten this time. I don't think necessarily by Joe Biden. I don't see Joe Biden necessarily decisively beating him. But I do see, even though, as I said, I don't like him, I do see Robert Kennedy coming on. Uh, he just got his third state, Hawaii. He's on the ballot. Okay, in that state, people say he's very close right now, or in Arizona and Pennsylvania. Yeah, and I believe in Georgia, okay, as well. Uh, so he's starting to rack up those states, and he has a lot of money. That super PAC of his has, okay, a lot of money. He has the money to get on the ballot in all 50 states right now, and he's continuing to raise money. He has a lot, okay, of billionaire support. I'm not for him, and on grounds of dump the corruption, I hope that he doesn't win. But on the other hand, of course, uh, he certainly won't be any more corrupt. Well, I don't know if you could even reason, okay, in that way. But all I have to say is on grounds of dump to corruption. They all have to be defeated. We all have to mobilize to do that because even the choice among the three of them, okay, is going to be a terrible choice. Even though I do hold out some hope, the uh, would not start a dictatorship in this country, as Trump would do. And I hold out some hope that he would run at least a better foreign policy than Joe Biden. But I've given you the list of things I don't like about him, and that gets worse because, as I talked about in my live stream uh, on Wednesday, he has ridiculous economic ideas. They're just, from an MMT point of view, they are just full of crap, full of total crap. Now I'm afraid I must say goodnight. Time for me to get over to D's. Thank you very much for coming, and I will see you tomorrow when I have 3 more shows coming up. Sorry I have to go now, Andy.